Welcome, everyone. Good evening. My name is David Billstrom, and I'm one of the leaders at Kidspo Cycling Apparel. You've already met one of my colleagues. Catherine is also a leader at Kidspo. Before we get started tonight, we have just a couple of logistical issues we want to go over. The first one is if we have any Zoom issues, your best course of action is go to that chat button at the bottom of the screen, which Catherine just had you rehearsing, and she will try to help you. She is the technical host for this evening. The second is we really want to hear from all of you tonight, and we're going to see how much of that is possible. Because of the limitations of Zoom and these kinds of press conferences, you can't actually speak, but you can use a button you may not have used before, which is also at the bottom of your screen. Just to the left of the chat button, you'll see a button that says Q&A. So when you have a question or a comment at any time this evening, please use that Q&A function to give us your question. And as soon as we get to the prepared remarks, which we are going to go as quickly as we can, then we'll be into Q&A, and we're going to try to answer those questions. So be familiar with that chat button and the Q&A button. And just a small editorial comment from my perspective tonight is about two huge announcements, which you're going to hear about in the next 5 minutes, but it is also a celebration. There have been many hours, a great deal of money and time, effort, collaborations, and many of the people who have just dialed in, you are part of this, and you were part of that money or that work or that collaboration. So while we're focusing on 4 people who are our leaders in this process, we want to respect all of you. And those 4 leaders, you're going to get to know them over the next couple of minutes if you don't already know them. They're going to speak in order: Lisa, Stephanie, Levita, and Jason. We also have a few other special guests who are going to be speaking. So enough from me. I am not going to be making any commentary. We're going to start off with Lisa. Lisa Jennings is the Recreation Program Manager on in the Grandfather Ranger District on the Pisgah National Forest. Lisa, take it away.
All right, thank you, David, and thank you everybody for coming tonight. It's so exciting to see the community come out tonight and to be up here speaking to y'all. So without further ado, why are we here? It's my great honor to announce that the Forest Service has signed the decision approving the Old Fort Trails project. And so, yeah, big round of applause. This seemingly small document that printed on a government printer that I'm holding up here was signed by District Ranger Nick Larson and represents so much more than just the words on that piece of paper. What's in there is approval for 42 miles of new purpose-built trail on the Pisgah National Forest surrounding Old Fort. So this is the culmination of years of work and really years of collaboration. So this project is not your typical trail project. This is a community-driven project where the Forest Service has worked with the community in a way that really brings everybody along and is responsive to how the community wants to use their public lands. And we're just proud to support that effort. This all started about 3 years ago with a couple different things that made this possible. So the community in Marion and in Old Fort started to organize. And that's when the magic starts. So the West Marion Community Forum started, the Old Fort community started, and then later on, People on the Move Old Fort, which Levita leads, started. And that spark in the community is really the starting point of this. At that same time, there was an idea, and Jason from Camp Greer, who's on, came to me and said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we connected the Blue Ridge Parkway to the town of Old Fort on trail, and you could ride Heartbreak Ridge all the way from the base of Mount Mitchell, the highest peak in the east, the foothills of Old Fort right to downtown. And that started a conversation that really began with people getting out and volunteering on the trails, and then started dreaming big. So once we knew that we could take care of the trails that we have in this area, we started dreaming big and looking at what's around Old Fort and what are the needs. And what we determined early on was that there was a lack of connectivity of trails. So you have these iconic trails like Kitsuma and Heartbreak and Catawba Falls, but they're not connected. And then they're also not accessible. So accessibility was lacking. Folks mostly go to Catawba Falls, and if you've been there on a Saturday this year, it is packed, and because it is the one accessible trail in the area. So knowing that we needed more accessibility. And then the third one was sustainability. What does it look like? How are the trails impacting the rivers, the trout, the ecosystems that we manage? So we started looking at all of that and started talking to people in town and traditional users. But then things changed when those two sparks, the idea from Jason and the community organization and the movement within the Old Fort Community Forum and People on the Move Old Fort connected. And that's when this project really changed and became a community project, and not just another mountain bike project or another equestrian project or another hiking project. It is a true community-driven project. And that was built by the trust that this group has in each other. And that trust resulted in resources that People on the Move Old Fort provided to Camp Greer, to work with the U.S. Forest Service to kick off this environmental review. We went from that point and started talking to the community. And so a lot of you might have been at our public input sessions that happened pretty much exactly a year ago. And we went to the public and said, hey, we're thinking about trails. What do you guys think? And we had a series of meetings and over 300 public comments, 20 iterations of the map, and built this project so that the result that you see in this decision is not consultants or experts from the outside. It's the community saying what they want and what they need and what will benefit the community and the users who live here. So that is all to say that this document and this decision provides the community input in the plan, but then also the important part from a land manager is the environmental review. So that year since we talked to you guys last, we've been looking at what are the impacts of these trails and of those 42 miles, and a team of biologists from the U.S. Forest Service, an archaeologist from the Forest Service, partnering with UNC Chapel Hill and Texas Tech University, looked at this whole system and said, what are the impacts, and are the impacts generally positive or negative, and how can they be mitigated? And so that's the other part of this decision, is that determination that we are not having adverse effects on the environment, that we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's to make sure that we're doing right by the land as the national forest. And so those are the two parts you'll see in this decision. And I think Catherine has a link to a Google Drive folder if you want to peruse that decision. Also has the maps in it. And then we go from that decision to making a big impact on the ground. So I said this is not another trail project, and you can see that from the story. We're making history here in Old Fort, but we're just at the starting point. And so with this decision, we have to have funding and we have to have community support moving forward. And that's what my other partners here will be talking about for the rest of this presentation. So with that, I'll turn it back over to David.
Thanks, Lisa. Thank you very much, and congratulations. We're next going to hear from Stephanie Swepson-Twitty. Stephanie grew up in Old Fort, and she is the CEO of Eagle Market Streets Development Corporation. She's working for change in both Old Fort and Asheville, and she's an expert in economic development. Stephanie.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Lisa, for giving us that wonderful segue into tonight's press conference. My chore this evening is to tell you about the funding or some of the funding that happened to make this happen. Initially, People on the Move sought a grant from Kate B. Reynolds, who is a health organization. And they were very intentional about how they wanted People on the Move and Old Fort Community Forum to utilize their dollars. But because of Levita's amazing leadership, along with her team, they found a way with us to utilize those dollars to participate in the trail and the study that Lisa shared with you earlier. So $75,000 out of a significant budget given to People on the Move went to fund the study that Lisa gave us information about. Following that leveraged real public-private partnership as Dogwood Health Trust came in, and between Camp Greer and Eagle Market Streets, they seeded $769,000 that will be used toward developing not only the trail, but the community. The Community Development Corporation, that is Eagle Market Street's development, has a physical space here to be able to continue to do the work of small business development and community development. We could not be more excited about having a partner like Dogwood and a partner like Kate B. Reynolds driving this initiative. As Lisa said, and I'll quote a colleague of mine who's an architect, and we were building something together, and I would say, Don, can we do? And he said, we can do anything if we have money, Stephanie. And so I champion everyone who's listening to take heed of that anything is possible if we have the resources at hand to do what we need to do. Again, I thank you for being a listening ear tonight, and I'll turn it back to David.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thanks for your guidance through that funding process. You can tell when Stephanie got involved in this project. We're now going to hear directly from one of those funders. William Buster has joined us tonight. William's the Senior Vice President of Impact for Dogwood Health Trust. If you Google him, you'll see that we're lucky to have him. William.
Thank you, David. It is indeed an honor to be here, to be a part of this amazing effort. This is especially compelling for the Dogwood Health Trust because of a couple of things. This project brought together nonprofits, businesses, community-minded individuals, philanthropy, and government. All of these entities recognized their common goals and shared interest and focused on the possibilities and a grand vision. Partnership begets more partnership, and we know the first 6 miles of this trail will be the beginning of the journey we will all be talking about. This particular partnership covers all of Dogwood's strategic priorities in a beautiful way. Our priorities are housing, education, economic opportunity, health and wellness. And underlying of the foundation of all of this is equity. Now you may ask, how is this all a part of a trail? Well, the health and wellness aspects are also readily apparent, as nothing is better for mind and body and spirit than to get out into the woods. With economic opportunity, we'll also have an opportunity from local manufacturers of outdoor gear to the hospitality businesses that will welcome travelers along the stretch of the trail. Think about the outdoor education that will happen along these 6 miles, these first 6 miles, from families sharing knowledge and traditions with one another to class field trips that focus on science, ecology, art, and more. And think about the education that has already happened in this community to bring us all here together today. Then what about housing? Well, as Old Fort continues to grow and attract more people to this beautiful area, to use the trail and other amenities, you have the opportunity to ensure that those who are new arrivals or who have called this community home for generations have access to affordable and equitable housing. So for all of those reasons, the Dogwood Health Trust is delighted to be a part of this and playing a small part of this as the community comes together. So I can say congratulations to the Old Fort community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, William. We appreciate you and everyone at the Trust. So we've all heard Levita's name quite a bit this evening. Levita Logan is the community leader, is a community leader in Old Fort. In fact, she's one of the first community leaders I personally met when Kitspo moved to Old Fort. And she serves as the project coordinator for People on the Move for Old Fort. And that organization was formed under the West Marion Community Forum, which is a not-for-profit, which is really at the root of this kind of collaboration between grassroots citizen activism and institutional leaders, which that is their mission. So Levita, can you give us a few words, please?
Yes, thank you, David. I just wanted to say that I am really honored to be a part of this Old Fort Trails project. I guess whenever I went into it, I was a little naive and I didn't realize how big it was going to get. That's pretty much with everything I do. I go into it not knowing, how big it's going to get. But I know with Old Fort being an industrial town, and when I was growing up, we had everything that we needed, like grocery stores, clothing stores, a furniture store, et cetera. Anybody that knew that grew up in the 80s knew that we grew up outside. And that's pretty much for my love for the outdoors. But I kind of got away from it for a long time. But I'm really passionate about being outdoors and more diversity on the trail, especially for the people here in Old Fort. And we noticed that the town was becoming stagnant, and whenever the plants, pretty much the plants shut down, the community forum pretty much gave us a voice. And I know our first meeting was in 2018, and we had over 100 people that come to that meeting, from people that lived in city limits and people that lived out of city limits. They wanted to know what this community forum was all about. So a lot of people had their doubts. They didn't know. A lot of people talked. They thought it was just going to bring alcohol into town, but that's not what we was all about. When we're seeing that we want Old Fort to grow. We want to see more businesses, local owned businesses, especially Black entrepreneurships. And at one community forum, that's where I met Jason. He was there at the forum to introduce the trails. And then when People on the Move formed, then we formed the Old Fort Economic Group, and this is where all the magic started. So I'm just really, really, really honored to be a part of this Old Fort Trails project. Back to you, David.
Thank you, Levita. Well, it will be no surprise to some of you here that this project, even though we haven't broken ground yet, has already attracted national attention. One of those admirers is the Honorable Senator Tillis of the great state of North Carolina. He could not be here today live, but he's participating nevertheless. So if you guys can just watch your screens.
Hi, I'm Tom Tillis, Senator from the great state of North Carolina. Congratulations to everyone in the Old Fort community on the U.S. Forest Service approving 42 miles of a new trail in the area. I know these approvals are rare and take a lot of work, but I'm proud this project was chosen that will bring economic growth to the area. This was a truly community-driven effort led by People on the Move for Old Fort, especially Levita. Thank you for your leadership and your partnership with Jason, Lisa, Stephanie to make this important approval a reality. I also want to thank Kitspo and Hillman Beer for their collaboration and commitment to the Old Fort community. Today is a great day, and I hope you all enjoy this celebration. I can't wait until these new trails are finished, and I hope to be there for the grand opening. All the best.
Thank you, Senator. And the Honorable Senator Burr will speak next.
Senator Tillis and I believe that Western North Carolina has a lot to offer, from hiking and fishing to exploring wildlife and historic homesteads. There are many ways to enjoy the area's national treasures. That's why the Great Smoky Mountains National Park is the most visited national park in the country. Eat your heart out, Yellowstone. Even though North Carolina has hundreds of miles of trails, many of these iconic trails are concentrated in small areas of sprawling forest. But that's about to change near Old Fort. Thanks to the collaborative efforts of G5 Collective, people on the move for Old Fort, Camp Greer, Lisa Jennings, Stephanie Swepson-Twitty, and small businesses like Kitsbro and Hillman Beer. The U.S. Forest Service has recognized the importance of this community-driven initiative and approved the development of 42 miles of new trail. Most importantly, this project will bring economic development to communities surrounding the trails and enhance access to North Carolina's great outdoors for years to come. I applaud your dedicated work to bring this concept to reality for millions of future visitors. I congratulate you on this milestone achievement and look forward to all that's to come with the Old Fort Trails project. God bless.
Thank you, Senator. I think we can all be proud of the fact that this project's already attracting attention, and I think Senator Tillis put it well. Can't wait to be here for the grand opening. So on that note, we're gonna go to the last of the prepared remarks from Jason Mcdougall. Jason formed the G5 Trail Collective, and he is the executive director of Camp Greer. Jason?
Thanks, David. It's great to be here tonight and to see so many people join us. This is a big deal and a big moment for Old Fort, and we're honored to be a part of it. Camp Greer created the G5 Collective to bring financial and volunteer resources to the Grandfather District. And this whole project started with volunteerism and community engagement. And so tonight, like Stephanie said, we're announcing phase 1 of trail funding, as well as phase 1 of community development funding. And those two things are going to be linked together for Old Fort for many years in the future. So while we're talking about trails today, we're really talking about what they can do for the people that live in Old Fort and for the community. So like Lisa said, this is the starting line. And it took a lot of work and a lot of resources to get here. But we're excited that we're finally getting the green light, and we're going to get to build some trails. So what are we building? So this is phase 1. This is 6 miles of 42 proposed miles. This also includes phase 1 of the parking lot, which is a space for about 100 cars and some horse trailer parking. These 6 miles of trail will be multi-use, and they'll be the most accessible trails to the community in the Old Fort region. So of those 6 miles, 4 of those miles will be easy hike bike types of trails, and 2 miles will be intermediate hike bike course. Construction will begin in January and be completed by summer of 2022 for these 6 miles. So we hope to be hiking and biking and riding new trails in no time at all, sometime this summer. Yeah, exactly. So how can you get involved? Like I said, this all started with volunteerism and community engagement. So we've got a couple ways for you to do that. One, you can visit our website and check out our volunteer dates. Those have been posted for the remainder of this year and the first part of 2022. We also have a special weekend coming up this weekend, November 19th and 20th, to come and celebrate and also to do a little bit of trail work with us here. So Saturday and Sunday, We'll be doing trail work around the trails in Old Fort. There's free camping at Camp Greer Friday and Saturday night, and there's a free dinner at camp on Saturday evening. So come and celebrate this exciting announcement with us this coming weekend. You can register on the G5 site for that trail work weekend, and you can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook to get updates. So we're really excited to play a small role in Old Fort's development. We're really excited for what this announcement means for the town and for camp and for the residents of the community. So I will turn it back over to you, David.
Thank you, Jason. And I think it's kind of unfair. I know we have people dialing in from all over the country tonight, and not all of them can be in Camp Greer this weekend building trails. So to those of you who aren't local, our apologies and compassion that you can't join us. So without further ado, we want to move quickly to the Q&A. You can see in chat that Catherine's showing you to use the Q&A tool, and we're going to take your questions. I think the first one is for Lisa. Which trail will be built first?
Oh, well, that's a great question. So actually, we'll be building multiple trails at once. So within this timeline, which is pretty fast of having trail open this summer, we'll be building the trails in the E zone first. So if you've seen our map, there's the E zone, which is the community oriented trails, and that's 6 miles that Jason was talking about. So there's kind of a stacked loop easy trail system, E1 through 4, and an intermediate multi-use E6 through 8. And they'll be built at the same time using 2 different trail builders with 2 different techniques that we're really excited to get on the forest and have great trails open by summer.
Wow, that's awesome. So 2 different contractors simultaneously. Okay, so that question came from Angela. Ben wants to know when will the entire 42 miles be complete? And maybe we should add to Ben's question, what does it take to get the 42 miles complete? I think that's probably yours, Jason.
Yeah, I can take that one. So we are planning to build all 42 miles in 5 to 10 years. We hope that will be closer to the 5-year mark than it will be to the 10-year mark. But we'll break ground in January of with the first 6 miles will be done by summer of 2022. And the plan is just to keep building trail continuously for 6 or 7 years. To get all this done. The estimated cost for the whole project is about $3 million, of which we've gotten about $500,000 funded to date. So we're looking for the next round of construction funds now.
Okay, so Natalie points out that she has the map printed in front of her. For those of you who have that link in the chat window, you can get to the map. If you want a physical paper map, you can pick one up at the Old Fort Ride House in Old Fort. There's also a large scale version that Lisa has put on the wall in the Ride House that's a little easier to see, just in case you had, say, older eyes, not like me. Natalie would like to know, where exactly will the first parking lot be built? So I think that's probably you, Lisa.
Yeah. So at the intersection of Curtis Creek Road and Jarrett Creek Road. And so this is only a couple miles from downtown Old Fort. If you're familiar with Curtis Creek, you're still on the pavement, and it's about a mile up from the intersection of Curtis Creek Road and 70. There's some fields at that intersection, and the first parking area will be built on the field right after you cross the bridge.
And just to lead the witness, why do we like parking lots if we love the woods?
Oh, yeah. So, you know, if you have been to the forest to go hiking or whatever your mode of transportation is, parking is a huge issue. And especially in national forest projects, it's very rare that we have flat land to develop parking. But what we know is that if we're not thinking about parking, we're not thinking about accessibility because people want to know they can get there and park. And we're also not thinking about sustainability because when people park on the side of the road, that leads to resource damage and runoff. So we are super fortunate to have, I think it is about 12 acres that has the potential to be developed for parking right next to this new trail system. And what that looks like in 5 to 10 years is going to be parking for 500 cars, 12 horse trailers, 2 restroom facilities, changing rooms, and water.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. We're still entertaining more questions. Terry wants to know, who are the trail builders? Can we share that? I know you guys are involved in the contracting process right now.
I would say we're going to be hosting some community events later in December, and check back with us then. We'll be prepared to make that public, but we're working on it.
Okay, we have another question from Maria, which I think is probably best for Stephanie. Maria asks, with the new bill signed by the president, is there any funding that could be gleaned? And I'll also say that the governor has announced that he'll be signing the legislative budget for North Carolina. He announced that today, and that includes over 110 million for parks and trails. So Stephanie, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. My understanding of the president's bill is that it is mostly tied to bridges and road construction, though I have not read the bill in its entirety by any means. And so there is always a possibility that there might be funding in the bill still for recovery, which might cover some of the work that we do. I'll defer a little bit here if he feels comfortable to my esteemed colleague, Mr. Buster, who probably has a better handle on this than I do, David.
William?
Stephanie knows about as much as I do. So, but I do believe that most of the funding from what the president signed is directed towards physical infrastructure like roads and bridges, not necessarily rural development.
Okay, so thanks for that. We've got a couple of other questions coming in. David would like to know, have the future phase areas already been decided? And I think that goes direct to the community input question. Lisa?
Yeah, so I'll say we are looking at phase 2, right? Because we want to make sure that we're keeping building over time. So we have to start thinking about that now. And what we're trying to do is have a little bit for everybody, right? So this first phase is really the easy trails, community driven. The next phase, we're looking at some of the A trails as the potential next phase, although we haven't totally nailed that down. And so the A trails are the ones around Point Lookout, Kitsuma, the Old Fort Picnic area. So one of those trails that I know the mountain bike community is really excited about is a trail that is on the other side of Point Lookout that will be a Kitsuma type trail in that area. So some of those might be, some more difficult trails to go along with some of the easier trails. And one that's really exciting for us that's in there is that Heartbreak Ridge extension, the trail that started the idea. And so that's a priority from that standpoint of really connecting the backcountry to town.
Yeah, so for those of you who are trying to follow along without a map, we do urge you to get a map because 42 miles plus the existing trail inventory means this is a complex project, and that's why we're hearing Lisa say the A trails and the E trails, they're all coded by letter and number. So just a plug for getting your own copy of a map. Thanks, Lisa. So Deirdre wants to know, I'm just going to read it. How can we volunteers help with monitoring the obvious success of this project for user experience? Jason?
Yeah, it's a great question. Lisa, jump in here as well. But so one thing you can do is to come volunteer. We track all of those volunteer hours under the G5. And I know other volunteer organizations do that as well. We've also applied for funding to do some data collection from the starting point here. So we want to monitor things like, housing prices and use patterns and new businesses that are created. So all those impacts that we think are going to ripple out from this trail project, we're looking to capture that data. So one is to join your local trail volunteer organization and make sure your volunteer efforts get counted. And then if you're a funder that likes data, we would like to talk to you because we need to collect some.
And Jason, maybe you mentioned it, I'm not sure, but you might tell all of our participants here just how important that data on volunteer work is that led to yesterday or today's approval by the Forest Service.
Yeah, so in order to build new trail, we have to do a good job of taking care of what we have. And so, like I said earlier, this whole project really started in volunteerism. So we had to kind of earn the street cred, so to speak, to be able to say, hey, we're showing up, we can come to the table. And so, the G5 Collective is not a membership organization, but there are other trail, volunteer groups that are. And so just joining your local trail advocacy group is a big place to start because it does form the foundation of everything that's built on top of it.
Okay. Well, we want to be respectful of everyone's time, so we're gonna take two more questions, and then we're gonna wrap this up and celebrate, or I think get started working. Two more questions. Heath asks, is there a way for community members to donate funds for the trails? I think this is ironic because I know Heath volunteers and works on the trails, but Levita, maybe that's you. How do you give money to this?
I have no clue. I guess I know that 04 People on the Move, they do have a website and it's called 04together.org. You can donate there for People on the Move. And I believe that the G5 may have a donation on their website as well.
Yep. And so we're going to put those links in the chat as soon as we have them for all of you. I think most, if not all of the money flows downstream right to the trails, regardless of who you give it to. So any other questions? One more question. Okay, well, let's wrap this up. Let's give these folks a round of applause. Pretty amazing. Thanks everyone tonight. This has been recorded and there's going to be a rebroadcast. We're going to save the chat, so there's plenty of access to data. I see right now that in the chat, the websites are being put there, so you can click through to any of them. You're also welcome, if you're in the area, to stop by the Old Fort Ride House, and our rangers there in the Ride House will help you get the information you need, and you can pick up a map there as well. I think that's it for tonight. Thanks to all of our presenters. This is just a fantastic situation. Thank you all.